So welcome to our, I believe it's our 6th class of 12. So we're halfway through with our classes and apprenticeship. So glad you're here. So we're just going to declare space that we're meeting on the sacred ground of sovereignty. Each of us, ourselves, those we love, our homes, our properties, each cocooned within the fivefold field of divine good, with those teams of integrity and intelligence who activate and work on in those protocols. We are here on Gaia, connected to her, working with her in partnership and in stewardship of her land in behalf of wholeness. Working on the foundation of the divine feminine of Gaia, Sophia, and Grace, opening the doors for the correct and original action and mission of those souls in male bodies. So we are here to learn, to share, to expand together. That our energy and the energy field around us is changing dramatically, inviting us always to something more deeper and even more instantaneous. So we are here with those intentions, and our circle is set. And so it is. So let's go around and place yourself in the circle, and definitely numbers of individuals you want into that healing space of divine good, crystal and healing temple, as well as world situations and life forms. So how about we start with you, Emma?
Okay, Emma in Williamstown, Massachusetts. And I'm gonna place 14 beings into the circle, one personal situation and all the global situations, because they're all interrelated. And I will call on Arlie.
Hi, I'm Arlie in New Zealand. I would like to put 62 people in the circle. That old sick cat who's doing so well for an old sick cat. Just chuck the whole world in. I'm not going to pull out individual situations. 5 personal situations. And I'd like to put in joyful healing. And I will choose Tara.
Okay, I am Tara. I'm currently in Mount Prospect, Illinois. I would like to bring in 27 people this time. 8 personal situations, 4 four-legged, and 7 world situations. And were we doing words today? I would like to bring in joy, and I would like to call on Avi.
I'm Avi in New Zealand, and I would like to bring in 14 people and 1 cat. And the word I would like to bring in is grace. And I'll pass to Emma.
I forgot to put in my word.
Oh, oops. I forgot you one.
Freedom.
Okay, Sarah and Raji here. I'm in Freeland, Washington, the north end of Whidbey. I'm going to bring 64 individuals. The planet with all of its hot spots being named as for what they are, and a cat and 8 dogs, and 3 personal situations. So we have, oh, and my word is expansion. Okay, so we have well over 100 in our circle named, and it's totally, that field is totally open for those who need or want to be placed in it. Whoops. And I think Deborah came in and out like that. And that field has a capacity and intention to dissolve what seems impossible to us as quickly as possible. Instantaneous is good. And doors then can open that were not even possible before. And that's the world we're living in. And we intend that those that we've placed in that world be brought into that consciousness and that capability. So there we go. And both Deborah and Orlando. Hi, Deborah. Orlanthe's on her way in, I think, too. We just placed ourselves in the circle with our name, where we are on the planet, and a word. Living forms, who do you want into that healing space also, and then a word. So you're going to do it all at once, yourself in the circle as well as who you're bringing, animal.
Deborah in Sanford, North Carolina. Let's see, 20 people, 5 personal situations, 3 world. In a world, healing, word, healing. Thank you. And I don't know how to mute myself on this.
I'll mute you here, but I'll have to ask you to unmute. Then I think you'll get a button. There, you did it. Good for you. Okay, so Orlanthe is coming in. We'll see. Looks like she's having I don't know if it's popping her in and out or not, but they keep popping her back out. So we're here with a session number 6. And before we start, there are a couple of things that, in addition to any questions you might have, what I would like us to share for the first little part is what are you finding helpful in either using the processes or finding time, how to keep track of, getting things done, anything that is helpful in staying with assignments, I'll say assignments, anything feedback wise that has been helpful to you. Hello, Orlanthe, glad you finally were able to stay. You got my shirt on, Orlanthe. You got my shirt on.
Yes, I do.
Before we go into kind of sharing some things, we just put ourselves in the circle. However many people in living forms you want in situations of any kind. So I'll have you put your group in too, and then we'll get started. Oops. So up your unmute. There you go.
So my name's Orlanthe. I'm joining you all from Arizona. I believe I have 14 people in my circle. I want to bring in 2 dogs. My daughter who's sick with COVID. My word I want to bring in is connection.
Okay. So I'll just restate all the different values that we have activated within this field. Not that we brought them in because they were already here. We just activated them. Freedom, joyful healing, joy, grace, expansion, healing, and connections. So I just want to give opportunity to share what you have either learned from the process that might be helpful for others, anything that has shortened the time it takes or made it smooth, or questions you might have. So we'll do that first. And so I'll just open the field and you can just popcorn any of that is up for you.
2 things. First one is Emma mentioned last week that she's noticing patterns. And I had not looked back when I did the reality shifts or statements at what I said last week or what I sent them or anything else. And then I started looking back. There's absolutely a straight line connection, which I found really inspiring, good, showed me I'm on the right track. I mean, I'm seeing the same things and I was really, then it occurred to me that there's been no shift and that maybe I shouldn't be so overjoyed about all this. So it was a good and bad sort of thing. Second thing is, this was my most difficult week. I had tremendous trouble getting this homework done. And finally, I just had to let go. And I didn't get it done until the last day when it was due. And usually I get it done a couple days in advance. I get to, look over it, make sure that that still feels right, et cetera, et cetera. The other thing that I've noticed is the more into this work I get, the more, I don't know if the word is intuitive, but my tarot readings have been incredibly right on. And I'm total novice beginner with the still very heavily going on with me. But suddenly I'm doing readings that I think are right on. And that's me.
I just want to say one thing. You kind of did some healing in that last class with that muck that was holding you back from stuff. I'm assuming that was some of her stuff, right? Sharon, maybe that's what's freed you up.
Oh, when we did the pit.
Good point. Totally excellent.
Yeah, I'm thinking that could be it. The pit for my peeps, I think the first one I did was for my client. And it seemed to be easier than doing it for my facilitator. So the facilitator, I felt like I was kind of making it up a little bit. And maybe it's just that they don't have some major horrible pit. Maybe that could be it. I'm not really sure. But I was having issues again with the pendulum. And I was just so tired that day. And I thought, you know what, I'll put this down. I mean, I finished it, but I decided, okay, I'm going to try to figure out how to work on blockages, because maybe the other person has blockages, but I'm not really sure how to approach it or to clear those. So that's something I need to figure out, because that could be part of my issue there with the pendulum, and like you mentioned before. So that's my issue lately.
This was actually the fastest actual sessions that I did, but I kind of, I actually, what I do is spend a lot of time on the format. And so I take my notes and I take the handout that Sharon sends and I put it into its own document, and then I change the words and I make it make sense to me. So I spend a lot of pre-time, but now it's easier because now I just have that script, and then I just plot, different people in and do the work. And yeah, I agree, Arlie. I find my intuition in all sorts of different aspects of life is flowing more. So that's nice and fun. I know this sounds like a 5-year-old, but they're mean. They are so mean. They take so much pleasure in causing pain. They are just so mean. And it's such a nice feeling to, I really appreciate the way you modeled the session for us, Sharon. So it wasn't like, it's sort of like, I release you and bless you. Go have fun transforming into light because you can't do this anymore. But the sense of them pulling or fading away, that energy fading away, it was a nice feeling. But man, they are so mean. And then in terms of organizing, I mean, everything that I do is on my Google Calendar, and my Google Calendar is a phone app, and I have all of my appointments, and then I have all of my tasks, and I have reminders set like half an hour before and 10 minutes before. And that doesn't always mean that I'll do it. And so, I had the tag sessions scheduled, I think, for Saturday, and didn't actually do them till yesterday. And maybe this is a question you can answer, but I don't like to do tag sessions when I'm not feeling well. I don't want my energy contaminating. And so sometimes that makes it more of a challenge. I'm complete.
I just want to share my experience. I just want to let Emma and Arlie know that their outlines are very helpful. So I found them to be very resourceful, and I did use them. So it was pretty straightforward for me this last lesson. But last week I had some major blocks. I felt like last week I really struggled, and I can't explain why it was easier for me this time around. It just was. One of my clients needed a crystal child process, and one did not. And I was asked, do they need this done? I get a yes or no. And then at the end, I was asked, is there anything more that needs to be done? And both were no, after I had done different processes for both. The crystal child process, when I saw it last week, I wouldn't say nervous or scared, but it kind of it shocked me a little to see it unfold right in front of us. And the way you had dissolved the energy, it was very reassuring for me. And it let me know that I could do it. You acknowledge it and tell it to go back to source. That was something I really needed to see, to take, I guess, the fear factor out of it. I've always been, I guess you could say I've always been scared of negative energy. So I think that really helped me. My client that needed the crystal child process, that negative energy was called Pete. And it showed, I asked, like, where in time are you, when this happened, where are you at? And it showed me like a dark tunnel. I can't explain how I got this vision, how I got the name, and I don't know, it just came to me this week. So yeah, it was good for me, and thank you for everyone's help.
Yeah, I have to say thank you to Emma and Arlie for the outlines. It's made it so much easier for me, like basically going through and making sure I hit each thing, because I was definitely missing things out before that. And I really liked having that audio recording, Sharon, that you posted. So I did one soul integration without it, and then one with it. And yeah, it was just great to kind of like sit back and have the audio going. And yeah, that's, I think, and same with what Orlantha said about, I used to feel very afraid of negative and vibing energy, and I just feel very empowered now. Like, I don't lie awake thinking about ghosts anymore, because I feel like I could just kind of shield and like ask them to go away, and I'm the one with power, and it feels really good. And I had a potted plant fall over in the middle of right in the middle of the soul integration when I was using the audio, and I was just like, no, we're sticking, like, can't pull away now. I'm like talking to this dark thing, like we're finishing this and then attending to that. And yeah, there was a very strong pull there of like, no, we're not just going to take the earbuds out and do this now, and get back to this because we're mid conversation, you know. So yeah, I did have one question though that may have been answered in the past, but it's popped up again. And when we're doing all this like deep sixing of our clients and of ourselves, how come it's not picking up these, like, you know, the ones that require the soul integration and these deeper processes? How come it doesn't take care of everything in one hit? That's me.
You're on, Deborah. Any feedback from you?
Yeah, I'll be just one thing, and Sharon, I'm sure has another explanation, but Morna and Ho'oponopono would say in the process, and part of it is, it's what comes off is what your body can handle in that given time. And then if it was all to go in one fell swoop, a lot of times you couldn't handle it. It would be too much for it all to go at once. So, I mean, that's one possible explanation. And then there's also layers and embedded layers and hidings and, you know, but one of them is you couldn't handle all of it. So maybe. So this past week, so last Thursday I mentioned I was really tired. So Friday I took a COVID test, and as soon as that little liquid hit that T-line, it was jumped out. It was like, oh, okay. I'm still testing positive. So last Friday I started isolating. We have a big enough house that I can do that. But I've been sleeping down in a bedroom that had been Terry's daughter's when they moved here 20 some years ago. And at that point, you know, she was young, and I've cleaned on that room a lot. I'm using different methods, but there was still a lot of negativity in the ground, in the land outside the house and stuff. So I couldn't do the work on the weekend because I was just, it's like, I don't have enough energy to go into the pit to keep anybody safe or deal with any of it. And I'm like, I don't think that's a good idea right now. But I just kept cleaning on the land here, and then I do some work on my peeps as I could, but just very gentle and stuff. And but I did find that I had very, very odd dreams and deep dreams, and I don't think it was just COVID. One of them, I woke up in the middle of the night, and it was a dream of people I worked with when I worked at EPA that were really good people. And when I first worked there, I remembered after the dream that there was a group of them that I had remembered being with in not Camelot, but sort of a medieval time period in England somewhere, and trying to do good things. And it was several people that kept coming up that were very special to me then, and just sort of making it felt like things on a deep level were making new connections. And one of them is now dead, so I know I won't work with them in this lifetime, but the others of why it was important, and just sort of knowing that those pathways were there and it was important to be there and had been, you know, there. And so I had to ask Sharon and say, look, I can't do this week. I need help. And for me not to do what I've agreed to do is very difficult for me to do. But I didn't feel up to doing the process this week. And I've dealt with a lot of negative energy in my life to have to kind of move it on, whatever. And I don't like it, but I'm not really that afraid of it. But I also didn't feel like I could protect myself well enough to deal with it. So I just had to say, I can't do it. So that was me this week.
Yeah, totally appropriate. Okay, so let me go over some of these things. So Avi, why doesn't it all go at once? And Deborah definitely it has a part of that's a part of that is so true. We have been so layered deep in the shit that then we haven't understood how contaminated we are. You know, people point to Christ's time and how he raised people from the dead, and we are probably 1,000,000 times more contaminated than that time and place. So you can't, it's like apples and oranges. You can't say, well, because that happened then in that story, and we should be able to do it in this story. No, there's things we have to do more for ourselves and our environment, and that's what we're doing. So one of the things is that there's layers deep. Taking it all out at one time is, with TAG, it's like the deepest, most effective, and yet gentle on the system. That's how we function. I want to go as deep as we can, as much as we can, and still gentle on the system. And so that criteria is in place. And we might be able to, I mean, that might still get us to more instant healing because there's less garbage than there was 10 years ago, you know, so there's that too. The other part of it is this, that there are some aspects of that, I'll just call it negative karma. It's not payback, it's just negative stuff that each person has that is there to be handled consciously. So it can't be eliminated just with deep sick, and it can't be eliminated just with it can't be eliminated just with the tag matrix activization. It's just like in the 11th hour, 90% is marked at birth, but now that 90% is magnified, it's coming in its different forms, but it's still only about 90% that can be eliminated, you know, by just a request and asking, but not at one time. I mean, we figured it would take a year of a child's at birth to be able to get that 90% gone. So we're doing what we're doing is what we're doing. And what shows up is what needs to be done. And as deep as we can get it is what will be brought to the surface. The other thing is in relationship to, you know, I really appreciate the scripts, really, you know, because sometimes what I think I know what we're going to address, and I think I know what we're going to address, and yet we address something different come up. That's kind of what happened last week. I think that what I'll just call laser coaching is so valuable. I know I find it valuable in my life. And so I want to be able to maybe do that a couple more times, take a situation, and we have to be able to take a situation that keeps everybody anonymous and safe, but then walking through it and showing how it works in real time with a real situation, I think is really valuable. So I'm glad you found it valuable too. Let me see. If anybody wants to know, you know, more about existence systems, Emma's our go-to. There's just no doubt about that. I thought I was keeping a track of everything, right? And I was trying to find some things for class today, and I'm going like, I know I created that. Where the hell is it, you know? And I thought I put it right where everything, and it wasn't. So my existence system is not one to model after. If you need help with your existence system, Emma's the go-to. Yes, Emma, did you want to say something?
Always happy to help.
Yeah.
I'm much better at organizing other people than I am myself.
Yeah. And what I'm noticing in several of your messages to your peeps is that sometimes it's just statements, and that's fine too. Glad to be working with you here, statements. Sometimes there's pictures that are added, which is great. Sometimes there's like, here's a bit of advice, and I don't know if that comes from pulling cards or whatever, but, you know, feel free to say how, you know, how do I expand, or do I expand in my message to the peep this week, you know? The feedback I've gotten, and I'll be putting it into onto the site, is some amazing breakthroughs. They don't know why, because they don't know what you guys are doing. They just know you're a huge part of that. And so I guess that's the encouragement at this point, is like, what we're doing is amazing. I am so hoping that we'll be able to expand what we're doing. And you know, whether you want to be a part of the next go round, it's totally up to you. But I really want to get another group of tag 1 people to tag 2 people, to be able to add more tag 3 facilitators, because the things that's going on out in the world is so exactly what we are here to do for individuals and beyond that. The one thing I'll tell you and this is for your work. It's not necessarily we're going to do it with the peeps, but I want you to know kind of an update that happened just in the last day, really. But working with that groups like the Islamic Republic, that's a group, and they are mean. They're entrenched, you know? And so working with that and going back in time like we do with the soul integration on that group, I became very aware of how intentionally mean they are in that soul energy, and how inflicting pain, who in the hell cares, the more the better. I mean, really, really. And so I said to our PTO and the Galactic and those who are working with the outsider energy, I do not want any of that injury left behind. I want the injury that they've inflicted to go into their consequence box, leaving it, taking it from our family. We do not have to be left. I do not want us left with that injury energy as part of the entropy. No, they created it, it's theirs. And so the reality shift, if I can read my notes, something like this, and you don't have to, you know, just to get a sense of, we give them full reign, permission. This is what the outsiders were telling me. We will do as much destruction as possible. And as we leave, you will have it left behind. And I said, not on your life. No, no. So taking that energy with them is required, whatever it was, whether it is the destruction through rape, through murders, through executions, through terror, whatever, that energy absolutely must go with them also, for them to figure out how to clean it up, because they have not directly experienced it. And the whole purpose of choosing agendas was that they know the impact of the agenda. And so they have to have the consequences of the agenda in their life. And their higher home source are saying, yes, and we've got a place prepared for them, because they can't come back into home either. So there's like a prison place for them. It's not to hold them in prison, but it's a place prepared for them to rattle around in those consequences until they figure out how to heal it within their own selves. And then they can go back to their home source. So that I've not seen that before. And so I that is part of the PTO, it's part of the Galactic, it's part of the Laniakea agreements, that energy the consequential energy must go back with them also. And then there's some outsiders that are going like, oh, great, I'm glad you're here. And they're not really leaving much yet behind. Tara?
Okay, so when you're saying the mirrored box of consequences,
Yeah.
that's working on the outsider energy for it to reflect back in them to experience the damage, and it's not really putting in the soul of the divine part of the human being that was being manipulated to do that. Is that right?
The consequent box that we've been using is for those who are being influenced, divine family member souls who are really being influenced with the negativity. So they've almost bought it. They're almost like turncoats, but it's their influence. So that's one way we are using the consequent box for those who are in souls in our physical bodysuits and yet they are, they're really so influenced. So they get the consequences, but they are souls in that are in the bodies. The same concept is for when we bring the PTO in and they contain a space for this whole configuration that says we're not of your light, we designed the program, we have the right because we own you, that all of that, and that's been true. When we contain that space, we've never put that entire group in a consequent box. And that's what we're doing now. So the box for the person in a soul in a physical body is for them to either wake up or at least be kept away while they're cleared so that they don't impact our clients. That's the consequences separating them, from our client. But this is now that box around this huge network creation of outsiders. And so it can be used both places. Does that make sense, Tara?
Yes, so is that something that we add to our work when we're having all that removed? We say, put that energy in a consequence box, or is that already part of the tag?
It's part of it. And like I've said before, for me, knowing that like Deep Six includes many things, Tag and Transform contains many things. 11th Hour contains many things. But so when I activate any of those bigger protocols, like your protocol contains many things, that doesn't mean that I might not feel like hammer away at the fact that energy is in a consequence box and that must go back with the outsiders. But you can use that individually if you feel to. I've put it in those protocols, but that's now added to them, but you can also activate them separately.
Okay. Perfect, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question about free will.
Yes.
We have these outsiders who come from a whole different place and they are outsiders and they are here on earth and they're doing all kinds of evil.
Right.
Is there a possibility that they can be down here in our reality and say, this is for shit. I want to be like those guys. I'm dropping this agenda. Or is their only choice to go back to their source to do that?
At this point, I think there's three choices. The first choice when we first started doing the work is they go back to their home source. They go back to their home source. Then we started to run into those that are saying, yeah, I don't like doing this either. And they don't go back to the home source. They go back to a platform where that group, without having to go back to home, can say, we want to choose a different agenda. And that's kind of, I don't even know if we had a name for it, if I've talked about it before, but it's a platform where they don't have to go back home, but they kind of go back to neutral. Then they can choose in that place, whatever they choose, but they can't stay in ours because they're not part of our agenda. They can't stay here. So they have to go somewhere to make a choice. Now what they're doing is there's this place that I don't want to call it a prison because it's not a prison. I'll just say a place of consequence for those who are really entrenched, they're taking with them really damaged energy. They're taking with them the consequences of their intense meanness. And they're going back, and their home says, no, not here yet. They have to do more work, understanding and getting themselves cleared up. And so there's three different locations. And so there's only been two before. And most of them have just gone back to home because they're ready to make different choices anyway. And they can do that at home, in home. And so having an in-between place to just choose almost became a moot point. So I would say there's probably really two major places, and then either they go back to their home of origin, that actual home of origin, or they go back to a consequence place. In actuality, we didn't used to take them back to their home of origin. Now that I think about it, we would take them back to the world where they chose the agenda. So it would be like their first world. And so they could at that point stay there or choose something different And then, then the galactic, they can't even choose that agenda anymore. So things have changed a lot. So I would just say there's probably two places. Either they're taken back to home source. There's enough, they're going to heal and readjust and then be there and do whatever they want to do, but can only come out on agendas of good. Or they go to this transition place where they have all the really awful damage until they do whatever they can do there.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, let's see.
That brings up another question for me.
Yeah,
So they have like 5 worlds, right?
yes, they have five, I call them negative worlds, yes.
Negative worlds, whatever. So what's happening so there's sending them all the way back to home. But what's happening on the other worlds?
The intention is the other worlds will be no more. But they are in place until we make sure all of our divine family's energies that have been kidnapped into those worlds are identified and removed. So they're in a state of almost like neutrality right now until we make sure all of our energy and any energy that they've kidnapped from any place else, but they're not active. They're not active like they were before because they're not. They don't have, the outsiders don't have the ability to be there and inhabit them and plan from them. And, we're taking them out of their worlds, which then, but we are not closing those worlds until all of the, all captured, kidnapped are home, back to their home base. Okay, good. Okay. I think there was something else I wanted to say too, but I don't see how I put it in my notes, and so it might come along. So what you're doing is really impactful. And as I hear and tune into other circles or other teachings or other conversations, I just want to keep saying, oh my God, come and work with us because we're doing such deeper things. We really are doing deeper things. And I'm finding that I'm able to share some of that into organizations, especially women organizations that are wanting to hold hands and grow together. And I'm saying you can't grow together unless you include a healing track that will free women of that. And then I realized we're doing that. We're doing the healing track. We're acting on that, both in Deep Roots and in our Sacred Ground Collective. And so, but helping expand what we're doing, and it is going to require more facilitators. And so that's what my hope is tag 1 starts in January, then we'll do tag 2, and then we'll do tag 3, and there'll be more tag 3ers. You know what I mean? And in that process, how many of you might want to, 6 months down the road, teach tag 1, so that, that what we're doing is so unique in the world. Not everybody has to do it, but what I'm hearing in so many corners and conversations is the entrapment and the wanting to get out of entrapment, and yet being able to hear maybe that much, which is fine. So as they hear that much, maybe 3 months down the road, we not have another tag 1, you know what I mean? So just keep your eye on whatever can happen with our presence in the world, expanding that in some fashion. I would really love that. So last week, I think it was, I had you ask if there was a plan that you were a part of, and what did those who are holding the plan want of you? What would the assigned vibration, and then what was the current vibration? And for me, I realized that I've been kind of getting glibbles of something bigger and kind of discounting it. in a way, you know? And that's what I wanted to, that is the other piece I wanted to say. When you go in to do, and what we did last week is the soul integration. That's what we did. Soul integration modified, but expanded and yet modified. And so with this crystal child, we usually just stay at the child level, at that voice level. We're soul integration, we're going to ask for bigger information. And so we did an expanded soul integration last week. And some people had the same question I had early on. It's like, am I making this up? How could this be true? I mean, I don't even know if it's true. And so I said to my team, I mean, I don't know. And they said, it doesn't matter if the story is true. It doesn't matter. Because I was talking about past lives, you know, I was talking to people I'd never met before. And I'd say, you know, this is the pattern, and this is where it came from. And I'd use that, just exactly what we do in tag 1, to this person I'd never seen before. And I didn't consider myself psychic or intuitive or medium or anything. So I'm just getting baseline information with the colors. And I said to my team, I mean, they said, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you get that this person walked during Christ's time and did this and that and the other. That doesn't matter. We're making up a story that can unravel a pattern. And the purpose is to unravel the pattern. That's why for me, I always had you know, somebody said, I walked with Christ and I was so-and-so, like I had an aversion to that. And I didn't know why. And I understood why, because we are story makers. That's who we are in this physical body on purpose, so that we can identify a story made up by the outsiders and go like, getting rid of that story and then rewrite the story, or a story in my life. Nope. I'm not going to have that story. Rewrite the story. We have the ability intentionally to write stories. So we always are going to create a story. We're always going to create a story. And then we can use the story to unweave and rewire and then put something different in. And that's personal choice. And it's law of manifestation. And it's all part of what we need to do. So don't worry if the story is true or not. If you're getting information, just act as if it's true. And act on it. That's what you're given. So you can act on it. And it is exactly what the person needs. And you know. So that's what I wanted to say about that. So last week, what was you know, I don't know if you remember, what was the bigger purpose of the plan? What was your assignment for the plan? What was your current status? And mine was like, not fully on guard, not fully present, not for, you know, kind of like taking it lightly. And so that was helpful for me to know that, oh, I was being called, you know, I was being called. And then I could embrace that color, you know, this, okay, how can I bring, let's say it was clear yellow, how can I be clear yellow in whatever the plan was? And so then I could begin to work with my guides in different ways.
That was 2 classes ago.
Was it 2 classes ago?
Yeah, class 4.
Okay. And so what I came to understand also for myself is that in that process that I had a superpower. You know, I heard people talk about, what's your superpower? And I got, who cares? But I thought, well, that relates to superpower. You know, what's my superpower? And so it led me to superpower. And so I thought, okay, what's my superpower? And so what's my superpower is I write good reality statements. I write good reality statements. That's my superpower. And so it led me to understand that I can often recognize what I'm being called to because I resist it. Not because my heart opens, because I resist it. I have resisted everything. When I was going to get on a plane and fly to New York City, to where my first spiritual healer teacher lived, I didn't know if I was going to be doing spiritual healing. I couldn't get on the plane. I got off in LaGuardia and I couldn't, we walked around the airport for an hour. She and I resisted it. When I did a session and helped her with a session, which I certainly didn't know how to do, but I'm at the table, she's at the table, and she's very clairvoyant and psychic. And she said, you know who you're working with? And I was angry. I didn't embrace it. I resisted it. And so here I am at this point going like, oh, my superpower is writing. Now, I don't write and edit. I write. Right, Emma? And I have not been able to write for probably about 3 months. And I look back and I started I remember in high school when I was writing or oratory and doing that kind of stuff. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. So what is your superpower? Just a question for you to think, what is your superpower? And it may not be something that makes your heart sing until you get past your resistance. So what are those blocks? I mean, Tara, maybe pendulum isn't your thing, really. Like we said, maybe you just get a number that drops in or a color that drops in. I mean, whatever. We have so screwed up our connections to our gifts that we're taking them back now. So, and as we do, I see it with all of you, like Arlie said it really well. Is this impacting my intuition? I think it better be. You're doing this for others, but you're doing it. If it's not benefiting you, there's something out of balance. So yeah, sometimes you're going to be pushed to do your own clearing, healing, and that might take a few days before you feel balanced enough to work on another. But nevertheless, the journey, if you weren't doing this work, maybe you wouldn't feel your imbalance, but then you wouldn't get to your strength either. Okay. So in relationship to your peeps, and I'm going to say this before we take a break, in relationships to your peep this week, you have, 5 sessions worth or conversations worth of sessions. And we've worked, for example, on what is the earliest childhood trauma? Where can we go to the earliest childhood trauma? Each of them had kind of a different focus. And so this week it's like, where are you called to work? And opening up to that tag session basic. And then I think it was you, Tara, or someone is a soul integration valuable, or is it valuable for me to do early childhood? I mean, out of all that we've done up until now, this week, just look over those possibilities and be guided to know what your client peep needs from you. Do the basic work, the basic, setting of space and activating the basic tag matrix in the 11th hour. And then what does your client need? There's 2 pieces of information I wanted to share with you about getting as deep as we're going. First of all, some of the individuals that we will run into in this work and in your own work will have experienced ritualistic childhood abuse or intentional childhood programming. And knowing that that's a possibility, I want to talk a little bit about that. Abuse, I was going to say, takes away the soul's identity. It's like the purpose of ritual abuse or programmed abuse, which is kind of the same thing, is to so endanger this soul, feels so in danger, almost life or death, that it's like the soul leaves the body or it splits off. And when that happens, those who know what the hell they're doing can lay in a programmed self. So let's talk just about just normal abuse, just normal abuse. So just in abuse, that's a family that's abusive, just abuse and trauma in the family. The soul often leaves the body. It might go into the void like we've learned, or it might just step aside and go like, I've got to go pretend I'm asleep all the time. The soul kind of leaves that place of presence because it's too little, too young, too fragile. So it like steps aside, and in a healthy space of that abuse, a part of that soul creates an aspect that says, I am going to keep us safe by hiding us in a closet. So hiding with something that is scary that comes up, we hide or we go to sleep. That happens in what would be called normal abuse. It causes broken brains, but it creates different aspects, but it comes from that soul doing the best it can at age 3 months or 3 years or 5. And so we end up with aspects of ourselves. If it's beyond just, terror, I guess I don't want to use the word normal, but I will use the word normal as distinguished from intentional ritual abuse. Okay, so you end up with aspects of yourself that sometimes become multiple personality types that they don't know about each other, and it's all about safety. And it's way that the little soul tries to keep itself together, or at least not dying, because he can't die, can't pull himself out. And those we work with in soul integration is a big help in that regard. All of us have aspects. I have aspects, and I was not in any kind of a terror situation. Those who were in terror situations definitely have aspects, and it's a healthy thing, especially when you can weave them back together. We do that with soul integration, even with Crystal Child. But I'm talking about intentional use of what happens in the psyche. And that's when someone, an adult, never a child, because a child doesn't have that capacity, but it's an adult or adult groups that intentionally put children, and it's usually children, through abusive situations, scary, dangerous to death situations, so that when that child goes, whoop, I'm out of here, Boyd, then they program into the brain, into the neurological system, a personality that they can control. And all they need to do is say a word. They program it usually with a word or a phrase, that they say a word, and that flips the personality into this other aspect. That's outside controlled abuse. You may run into it very rarely, but I think it's important that you understand that it does happen. And you may want to at least practice with your peeps to ask the question, is there any intentional programming or ritualistic abuse program present in this peep's psyche? And the reason you'd want to do that is that one of the voices that is programmed, especially, well, I won't say especially, it definitely in intentional situations where it's intentional, and I've run into this, so intentional, but ritualistic abuse is often intentional too. A personality is created that if any part of the psyche wakes up to start facing the abuse, there's a personality that flips in to take them into depression and suicide as the way out. So they won't talk. So that's why, you know, asking the question, is there any energy of intentional programming through abuse or ritualistic abuse? Yes or no, present in this psyche. Realizing that it doesn't matter, you know, if it's this present life, is in the lineage, doesn't matter where it is. If the answer is yes, go with it, because you're going to get to practice. And then in the next question you ask is there a program for suicide? Yes or no? And if there's a program for suicide, then what you're going to do is you're definitely going to use the soul integration, and I would use the soul integration we used last week. And if you get yes, and you don't want to walk with it this time, that's one laser coaching we can do together. You see, about if there's an aspect that is programmed for suicide and you don't want to handle it, you just take and say, okay, keep that aspect in the hands of their divine team. Keep that aspect in the crystal and healing pyramid too, because we'll be back. You see, but we've got to handle it. We've got to know how to handle it so that that part's totally diffused to do any further work on early childhood trauma. So any questions about that? Deborah?
Yeah, a couple things come to mind. I find it interesting, one, that you talk about lineage, and some people I know that, I mean, depression does come through some lineage, but this is a one that I've suspected the mother and grandmother of ritual abuse from a Mormon family background. So I'm wondering about that. Second, as a question with that, because on my peep from your program, not from this group, I kept getting to do the childhood integration and gather all the little ones and send them to the Marys and all. And when I first did it and asked at what age was the earliest age of trauma, it wouldn't do anything before the age of 20.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay. And I kept getting to do other ones, and I'd do it, and each time then it would go a little lower. And we'd gather up those people. And even at 20, I'd say, okay, let's get those and, you know, come along and all, and the whole thing. And finally we got down to quite a bit. And when we go in the room, and, you know, it's like little kittens hiding under the beds and you know, stuff.
Yeah.
And just sit there, and and I'd get, you know, maybe 10 aspects. And we just sit there and wait and talk to them and pet kittens and puppies, and more would crawl out every time.
Yeah.
And is that normal for
Yes.
those aspects to be hidden and come out later? I just kept getting
Yes.
to do it. So I just kept doing it over and over, and
Yeah.
different days, and I'd get different things.
Yeah, it's very normal. It's those, I mean, it's those young, and it can start it can start at utero.
Yeah.
The trauma can begin there even. And it's why we're able to do some very deep work, because it doesn't have to be conscious with the client. The client would probably freak out.
Yeah.
And to be able to let those little ones, as they feel comfortable, show up, is absolutely, you know, it goes back to why we can't do it all at once. Sometimes, you know, we have to honor what is given to us by the higher self and the causal team and the healing team and do what's before us. So that's a perfect example, Deborah. And so that's why I want to add this awareness. Again, I'm not sure that if there's any of our peeps or
Yeah,
facilitators that will have that, I have no idea. But we have to have it in our toolbox and we have to ask. And like I said, they might even say yes, using your peep as a surrogate for someone so that you get to practice and someone that you don't even know but is connected somehow gets released. You see what I'm saying? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, Orlantha with my shirt.
So, so if we ever get an answer yes, there is that type of energy and there is a program for suicide. Is there something we can do to like freeze frame it? Do we put him in a box?
Yeah. I think, you know what I think I'm going to do? I think that it's a big enough deal that we ought to do a laser coaching on it next week so that you're comfortable with it. But you could still ask, because this is what I would do. If I got the answer yes, then I would bring the Sophia group, I would bring in Grace, I would bring in the angels, Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene, whatever ethnic mother image that you work with for them. And the thing that you'll want to understand too is that at that level of injury, light has to be dimmed. It has to be dimmed. It has to be softened. They have to almost feel like you're still a little bit in the closet or under the bed, so you won't bring in, you might bring in the full spectrum of light, all the colors, and that would be good in the environment, but they would be softened, you see. And then you would be able to say into the group, I don't know how many of you are here, or you might ask how many are here. And I want you to know that that now that we know you're here, we are here with you. I would definitely give them that assurance. I would have them each be held by whomever they felt most comfortable in a way that is most comfortable to them. And I would have the whole situation freeze framed. Yes. You're almost made inert, so they don't have to be feeling anything, but we're going to be back. If you feel comfortable, I would do that, but I would also I would probably bring in a spokesperson to speak in behalf of these little ones rather than expect them to speak to me. I would say who in this space of the light can be the spokesperson for these little ones. And then I would use the soul integration process. And the whole purpose is to hear their terror, their fear, and let them know that you got it. And it will never, and because they held it, we can identify the source and remove it totally, so that they don't have to be frozen in time. They don't have to act all of that. They can take off the costume, even of the suicide, taking off the costume of the abuse, as if it's taking off costumes and moving them into that, blue room, crystal healing temple with those who, they're now in the hands of those totally of divine good.
Okay, thanks.
And then that's probably where I would, the reason I would bring last week's into it, because I would say who designed this program, who designed this kind of program, and then I would work to get that outsider at the very highest level, the whole configuration, and everything they did, the terror, the abuse, etc. That energy absolutely goes with them. And that's a group I would definitely think would be eligible for the consequent box, their home source box of consequence. And that's for them to figure out with their home source. But they have to take the energy, suicide energy, torture energy, etc., with them. Okay. Emma?
Sharon, as you're talking, I'm thinking it would probably be good to use the person as a surrogate,
Mhm.
obviously for other people who had that experience, but also possibly the people who perpetrated it.
Mhm.
But is it not a good thing to mix the perpetrators and the perpetrated?
I wouldn't do them in the same. I wouldn't do that. I would. You could certainly do two.
Okay,
You could look at the energy that is influencing it. Of course, it's outsiders, so that's
Right.
not for us to deal with. But then you could also ask after that, after all children were taken care of, especially this is like suicide, depression, I'm bad, whatever. Once that's then you could ask who perpetrated this, and because what has happened in the past is the outsiders have almost, well, literally kicked the soul out of the body sometimes and
Right.
used the body for a time and then slipped out of the body, and the soul is left with the impact of what the body was used for. And so that would be something to explore and understand more and heal. That's a
Okay.
good point.
Thank you.
Mhm. Yeah. And so I think next week that might be a valuable thing to do, because not only with this kind of behavior of ritualistic intentional abuse behavior and freeing those who have been trapped in it, but then working with the bodies, what's left with the bodies that needs to be dealt with, is also a model for, like, for example, in a domestic violence situation or a pathological relationship situation, when you're working with usually a woman who's coming because she's trapped in it, and we're working with her issues and her patterns, and she's gotten a hold and she makes that change. What we have been doing recently, or I've been doing recently, is then acting as if the perpetrator came to me. So vicariously working as if usually he, is asking for the help and working on him directly. That, and it's the same thing. So that we could learn that, be aware of that kind of healing, both on the one who has experienced directly and the one who has perpetrated it directly. Yeah. So next week, I'll make a note. I think that's a good one to do. Deborah?
As you were talking before, when Emma asked her question, I just kept thinking, oh my God, there's just so much healing that needs to be done. And I was thinking, and I saw legions of angels coming to help. And I'm just thinking that when we're doing this, that the healing teams may be getting much bigger with this new group of angels coming in to be helping facilitate some of this. So just, if they get bigger, don't be surprised.
Hey, I've seen that. So that's a confirmation of what I've already been shown and seen. And also there are some who are coming in with even who are prepared to work with like Iran Islamic groups in ways that we've been working on individuals and then groups, and they're working on groups. So legions are what I've been hearing, legions. I just want the UFO.
That was the word I heard too.
Is that right? See? Yeah. So it's like when I say that things are possible today that weren't possible 2 weeks ago, it is totally true. And I don't even know what it means, because I don't know what it means, so, but we're up for it. We didn't take a 5-minute break. So I hope that's okay with everybody. The cat's been really quiet, locked in the bedroom. Man, she's quiet. So where are you with all of this? So for, so for this week, there's nothing necessarily new, except ask those questions and get the answers. You don't have, and if the answer is yes, there is some ritualistic abuse, or yes, there is some suicidal depression programmed in, note it, freeze frame it, put them in the hands of the divine. And then let's walk through that next week. And other than that, you've got a whole bunch of possibilities from level 3. You've got also some of the tag processes from 1 and 2. And so just let yourself be guided in what it is your peeps need. And keep building, keep building. And send out the vibe. More tag ones.
Yeah.
Yes,
I thought I heard you mention at the beginning that you were going to talk about some of the breakthroughs that people were having in your class.
I was going to let me see if I can. There's just been a couple that have come through that I've been able to write down. Let me see if I've got that. Oops. As you can probably see, I'm trying to pull up the website. And maybe I can just shorthand it with you. One of the women who is in, and she hasn't written it in a way that I could share it exactly. But I'll kind of shorthand what she said. She's been doing a lot of work for a long time. And so she's not necessarily one going off the edge, except she's always on edge, which is the case with many of us women, And so since she started being part of the deep roots, there's one thing after another, new openings. And she's been able to, because she's had to be so conscious and aware of catching. It just and that's disconnecting. It's like there's nothing to catch. It's almost like what you guys are doing under here, that she's not even, she knows the power of it. She doesn't know what you're doing, but she knows the power of it. And her life is starting to expand and move forward in ways that it hasn't up until now. Last week in class, I had them do, and we're not learning energy work in class, but I really felt like that it was time for them to take hold of their story. So we did, watch your story and did some kind of a crystal child process on it. And it wasn't exactly not just enough to give them a little tool. So she said, I had the most amazing experience and connection on Saturday during the crystal child. She said, oh my gosh, Sharon, it was beyond anything I've ever experienced and comprehended. It was so huge for me, my healing, my inner child, and my young adult. I can never do or say anything that could ever express the depth of my thankfulness for you in this program. It is truly pure amazingness. And that wasn't just because of the crystal child. I'm really clear that it's not just because of the crystal child process. It's what's going on within this work, and the deeper and going deeper in ways that might take some of these individuals, years, because we're doing it every week. You know what I mean? So let me see. I think there's one other one. I'm going to see if I can find it here. Because I've hidden it because I'm not ready yet to make it public. So let me see how I put it. see if this is it. Um, and another one said, so another one of our peeps had just felt to open herself up to what was stopping her in valuing herself. She felt new doors opening for her valuing. And then she got the statements from her tag facilitator that was right on, confirming to her what she was kind of inwardly sensing. And she just said, oh my goodness, I can't even, thank you and thank your group enough for this confirmation of what I was sensing. So they're trickling in like that. I'm not asking them to come in all at once. They just did a survey, and the survey was a baseline from 1 to 5. How are they doing in various aspects of their life? I didn't send that to you to be surveyed. And when we get when we get the follow-up survey, which will be maybe 3 weeks out, then I probably will give you a comparison, because each one of them have their own survey link. So peep A, this is where she was, and this is where she is, and then this is where she is, and then this is where she is. So it's kind of like still pretty anonymous. So I can only share I'm sharing with you some of the reflections, and these are, some of the reflections that I'm getting, and we have a variety of how deep the injuries goes with this particular group, where I think in the future we may have more that are more deeply injured. This group is a little mix, which is perfect for our practice, I think. So that's what I can share with you at this point. Okay. Okay. So next week will be what? What is that called? What is December what? I'm going to go see that real quickly.
22nd.
The 22nd, that's quite okay, right? Is that okay with you guys if we meet?
The only thing with me, I'm flying home that day, so
Oh, you're flying home that day.
I'll watch the video though. It's okay.
Okay. Yeah, the 22nd and the 29th. I didn't, on our peeps usually meet on the 24th. We're not holding class on the 24th, but we're holding space because I know some in that class may need support. And if any of you guys need support, go to our, some of our other circles, or put out a call, or, let's take care of ourselves and each other.
Can I
Okay.
put out a little mini code love for the group?
Yes.
So on my way to the doctor to talk about my pain issues, I slipped and fell in the ice, and then I neglected to mention that because I had already forgotten, and now my whole right side is really torqued. So
Okay.
setting a little light to this. I mean, it's
Okay.
funny, but not.
Yeah. Do you want me to code love it out there into the code love group, or just this group,
I
Emma?
think this group is fine.
Got
There's
it.
so many code loves going out.
Yeah,
We
there's a
really
lot.
need a lot of support right now.
Yeah, there's people who you wouldn't even normally think code love would be happening is happening. So yeah, this group is good. Thank you, Emma. We'll do that for sure.
And I appreciate all my support this past week very
Yeah,
much. Thank you.
It's kind of fun to support each other.
it is. It is. I had someone say, I can't remember how I guess she had heard code love, but she had never been on the code love list. So I sent it out, I think, to the larger Sacred Ground Circle, and she said, "What's code love?" And I said, "Well, this is what it is, XYZ." She said, "Oh, she said, I want to be on that. I relate to that." So she, yeah. Okay, my friends, I love you guys.
Thank you, Sharon.
Yeah, bigger and more expansive support. Love you all.
See you
Bye.
next week.
Bye.
Safe travels, Tara.
Thank you.
Yeah, safe, and
Bye-bye.
good health, wellness to all of you.
Mm.
Bye.
Bye-bye.